Notre Dame has had more great players come through its program than arguably any other school in the country. But if you were to create an ultimate team using the best Notre Dame players from the past 25 years, who would make the cut? My answer coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And today is Tuesday, July 16th. And thank you for making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And you can watch the full episode on YouTube, or you can listen wherever you get your podcast. If you are watching along on YouTube, this is your reminder to please give that video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's get into it. First off, I'm in a great mood today, and a big reason for that is because the long-awaited EA Sports college football video game is finally here. For those of you who got the early access version of the game, it has been 11 years since the release of the last college football video game, but on Monday, college football fans, young and old, were able to play as their favorite team once again on their video game console, and I'll admit it, I was absolutely obsessed with this game when I was younger. So obsessed that it's probably a good thing that it wasn't around when I was in college or during the first couple of years of my professional career, or else I'd probably be in a much different place than I am today. But over the past couple weeks, and really the past couple months, honestly, in the lead up to the launch of this new video game, it seems like everybody in the college football world has been talking about it. Players, coaches, people who cover the sport. This has been the focal point for the summer in the college football world, and now it's here, and I was able to play it on Monday. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype and more. If you haven't pre-ordered yet or got the early access, you're going to have to wait until Friday to play it, but I promise, whenever you get the chance to play, I think you're really going to enjoy it. But even if you're not a fan of video games, if those aren't really your thing and you don't ever plan on downloading this new EA Sports college football game, that's more than okay, because the video game is just what inspired the idea for today's show. So let me explain. One of the cool new features on this new game, it's been a fixture on Madden over the past couple of years, now it's on the college football video game as well, is the Ultimate Team game mode. And the premise is you get to play games and complete challenges on one team, and then you can unlock players from the past on that program to create a loaded roster, an ultimate team, for lack of a better term, of the best players, past or present, to play for that program. And that got me thinking, what would the ultimate Notre Dame team look like if you built a roster of the best players from the past 25 years? Because there is a little bit of a recency bias with this game. The very first NCAA football video game that came out was 25 years ago. I believe there was a college football video game before that, but really it's been around for the last 25 years, and I'm 28 years old, so that's why I really focus on the past 25, because it's the players who I remember watching growing up, and I am very familiar with the history books at Notre Dame and the players who played before my time, but as I was trying to figure out my version of the Notre Dame Ultimate Team, I wanted to focus on the guys that I was able to watch and figure out who are the best players at each position to play for Notre Dame over the past 2 decades plus. I had a lot of fun doing this because I got to go back, look at the stats, and watch some highlights of some of my favorite players. But I also realized that it's really hard to come up with this starting lineup because there have been a lot of really good players that come through Notre Dame. And I didn't want to leave anyone out, but I had to in order to do this exercise. So after a lot of thought and consideration, here is my roster. I'm going to go through my 2 deep on offense, defense, and special teams to give you my list of the best Notre Dame football players in recent memory. We begin at quarterback. I think it's got to be Brady Quinn, right? He set 36 school records during his 4 seasons with the team, 10 career records, 12 single-season records, 4 single-game records, and 10 miscellaneous records. He also won 29 games as a starter for Notre Dame, which is tied with Ron Paulus and Tom Clements for the second most in school history. Yes, I believe there is an argument to be made that Jimmy Clausen might have been a little bit more talented, a little bit more of a polished passer than Brady Quinn, but still, Brady Quinn is the career leader for passing yards, completions, touchdowns, amongst a lot of other things. So I feel like it has to be Brady Quinn. Okay, now running back was pretty tough for me. I'm going to go with Julius Jones. This might be a hot take, But if you remember watching Julius Jones, I remember watching him when I was younger. He played from like 98 through 2001, and then he missed the 2002 season due to academic reasons, and he came back and played in 2003. And he was basically the only player worth a damn on that 2003 team, especially in offense. He finished 6th all-time in rushing yards. He has the most rushing yards in a single game with 262 against Pitt in 2003. And he did all of this playing on terrible teams with terrible offensive lines. I have Kyron Williams as my backup here. One of my all-time favorite Notre Dame players, was really, really productive in his 2 seasons really playing for the Irish. He got redshirted his freshman season and then had 2 awesome years before he left early for the NFL draft. But I think I got to go with Julius Jones because of what he was able to do with the worst supporting cast around him. And I think that if he had played on that 2000 team, they had no one on offense who could make a play. I feel like his career would be looked at a lot differently because he had been a really good player on a team that had a good season. Honorable mentions: Wojciak Estime, Josh Adams, and Darius Walker probably all have an argument to be on this list, but I'm going to go with Julius Jones and Kyron Williams on my team. Okay, wide receivers. I'm going to go with 3 starters here, and then I'll give you my 3 backups. For my starters, Michael Floyd, Jeff Samardzija, and then Golden Tate in the slot. Michael Floyd was easy. Most career receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns at Notre Dame. Golden Tate had the best single season of any wide receiver in school history in 2009. He had 9 games with over 100 receiving yards that season, finished with 93 receptions, just under 1,500 receiving yards, and 15 touchdowns. Also won the Biletnikoff Award that year for the best receiver in college football. And then there's Jeff Samardzija, who actually held a lot of those records that Michael Floyd then broke, including receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns, and all that. So it was pretty easy to pick the top 3. But unfortunately, I had to leave Will Fuller off the starting lineup. That was really difficult. He's second in career receiving touchdowns with 30. He's 4th in yards, but I just could not put him over Jeff Samardzija or Michael Floyd on the outside because those 2 guys, I feel, were more complete wide receivers, even though Will Fuller was just so good. Also, on my backup wide receivers, I've got Maurice Stovall and TJ Jones. Stovall and Jeff Samardzija back in 2005 were an insane 1-2 combination, and if Rhema McKnight had not gotten hurt, that would have been maybe the best receiving trio in school history at Notre Dame. But at least for Stovall, he makes the cut here as a backup on my team. TJ Jones, just a model of consistency at Notre Dame throughout his career, so I'm going to give him the 6th and final wide receiver spot. Okay, tight ends. This was really difficult. So I'm going to pick Michael Mayer as my starter because he broke every record there is for a tight end at Notre Dame. In 2022, he was the entire Notre Dame offense. It didn't matter if he was double or triple teamed. He was going to make the play and get the chains moving for Notre Dame. So I'm going to have him as my starting tight end. And then with him, I've got Tyler Eifert, who's my backup, but also I could be running some 2 tight end looks here. And Tyler Eifert was just incredible. But this was really difficult because my 3rd guy, my honorable mention, is Kyle Rudolph. And you might be able to make the case that Michael Mayer was the 3rd most talented out of this group when you look at Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph, and then Michael Mayer, because Kyle Rudolph was just so good. From the moment he stepped on campus at Notre Dame, you knew that he was going to be a special player. But unfortunately for Rudolph, he got hurt throughout his career, and I don't think he was ever able to put like the career total that he was probably capable of doing. And I actually remember when Rudolph got hurt and then Eifert came in, you're like, man, this is a bummer. Rudolph is out, but then Tyler Eifert came out of nowhere, was the best receiving threat on Notre Dame in 2012 when they went undefeated in the regular season and bailed out that Notre Dame offense time and time again that season. So it was really hard to pick 2, but I'm going to go with Michael Mayer and Tyler Eifert, and Kyle Rudolph just missed the cut due to the injuries that he suffered throughout his career. Okay, now the offensive line, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one, okay, because we know that there have been a ton of great offensive linemen to come through Notre Dame in the past 25 years. So this was really difficult to do, but here's how I laid it out. So at left tackle, I've got Ronnie Stanley, first-team All-American in 2015, selected 6th overall in the NFL draft. He's one of the best tackles in the NFL today when he's healthy, which has been a problem for him since he entered the NFL. But I got Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. Then I got Quentin Nelson at left guard. Don't really need much of an explanation there. All-American, drafted 6th overall for a guard, which is crazy because guards typically do not go that high in the first round, but Quentin Nelson was a different player. Also basically had a highlight tape as a guard with all of his pancake blocks, which is extremely rare for any offensive lineman in college football, let alone a guard. So he was an easy pick for that. At center, people might forget about him a little bit, If you're a younger Notre Dame fan, you might not even really know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jeff Fain. He's going to be my starting center. He was an All-American in 2002, first-round draft pick by the Browns, went on to have a 10-year NFL career. One of the few smart draft decisions that my Cleveland Browns have made over the past couple of decades. But, man, he was a mean dude right there in the middle of that offensive line and really, really good. So he's going to get the starting nod for me. So this is where I cheated a little bit. I'm going to put Zach Martin at right guard, even though he played left tackle when he was at Notre Dame. Zach Martin plays right guard in the NFL. He's going to be an Hall of Famer in the NFL and in college. No doubt about that. He was an all-pro player the moment he started playing for the Dallas Cowboys, and he has just had a phenomenal career both in the NFL and college. So that was an easy pick for him to make it, but in order to make sure that Ronnie Stanley made it, I moved Zach Martin over to right guard. Another thing that I did to kind of cook the books here was I moved Joe Alt to right tackle. First-team All-American, left tackle for Notre Dame the past couple of years, 5th overall pick in the most recent NFL draft. But Joe Alt is going to play right tackle for the Los Angeles Chargers, which is kind of how I justified this move, to move Joe Alt over to right tackle. But just think about this offensive line for a second. Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, Quentin Nelson at left guard, Jeff Fain at center, Zach Martin at right guard, and Joe Alt at right tackle. That's insane, right? I think if you or I got the ball running behind this offensive line, we're putting up 100 rushing yards a game. I don't care how fast you are. This line is going to create some holes for you, and you're going to have a lot of running room. And then, yeah, sure, you'll get tackled and probably have to go to the ER, much like I would. But, hey, we're going to get some yards with this offensive line leading the way. Now, for my backups here, I've got Ryan Harris, the left tackle from the mid-2000s. He was a really great player, Super Bowl champion. Left guard, I've got Chris Watt. Nick Martin at center, Trevor Robinson at right guard, and then Mike McGlinchey as the backup right tackle. It's pretty crazy that Mike McGlinchey, a first-round draft pick in the NFL, made it to his second contract with the Denver Broncos, made a ton of money. He is a backup right tackle on this group. And that just says a lot about what Notre Dame has produced on the offensive line over the past couple of decades. So let's go back through my offense one more time before we switch it over to the defense. At quarterback, Brady Quinn, Jimmy Clausen is my backup. Running back, I've got Julius Jones with Kyron Williams as the backup. Wide receivers, I've got Michael Floyd, Jeff Samardzija, and the Golden Tate with Will Fuller, Maurice Stovall, and TJ Jones right behind him. At tight end, I've got Michael Mayer, Tyler Eifert, and then my offensive line is Ronnie Stanley, Quentin Nelson, Jeff Fain, Zach Martin, and Joe Alt from left to right. That is one hell of an offense. But can the defense top that? Find out right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, now let's take a look at my ultimate Notre Dame defense, and we begin with the defensive ends. Justin Tuck was an easy pick here. He's second in school history in sacks with 24.5 and has the most sacks in a single season with 13.5 in 2003. One of the best defensive ends to come through Notre Dame ever, maybe the best. Also had an unbelievable career in the NFL with the New York Giants, two-time Super Bowl champion. Was also the best player on the field at the same time that Tom Brady was on the field in a Super Bowl. I don't think we could ever forget that. So he was the obvious pick there for me. And then Stephon Tuitt. Second most sacks in a single season with 12, 21.5 sacks for his career, which is fourth all-time for Notre Dame. When you think back to how effective he was in that 2012 season, he was just simply unblockable. Like, he's one of the main reasons why Notre Dame was able to go undefeated during that regular season, because he was an absolute force on the edge. So for my backups here, I've got Isaiah Foskey and Victor Abiamiri. It's pretty tough to leave the Notre Dame career sack leader off my starting lineup here, but I got to give the nod to Stephon to it and Justin Tuck because I feel like they were a little bit more dominant. Isaiah Foskey was dominant at times, but sometimes in the biggest moments, it always felt like you could get a little bit more out of him, especially against the best teams on the schedule. But still, I don't mean that to be a knock on Isaiah Foskey. He was an incredible defensive end for Notre Dame, and he made my team just as a backup. All right, now let's go inside and look at the defensive tackles. I'm going to put Louis Nix first, the big fella, Irish chocolate. May he rest in peace. He led all Notre Dame defensive linemen with 50 tackles and ranked fourth on the team with 7.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks in 2012. And when you think about the defensive tackle position, it is not one that is prone to putting up a bunch of stats, but still, Louis Nix was able to do it. He absolutely clogged everything up on the inside. And a big reason why Stephon Tuitt was able to have as much success as he did on the defensive edge, Louis Nix deserves his credit too because he would just eat up double teams, and whenever they try to run inside, Louis Nix was there to make the play. Awesome player to watch, awesome player to root for Notre Dame, and it is just so tragic that he passed way too young. But whenever you get a chance to watch Louis Nix highlights, you're reminded of the just super great personality that he had, and he was just such a fun player for Notre Dame, and also very, very effective as well. For my other defensive tackle, I'm going to go with Sheldon Day. He was an extremely productive player, and I think this might surprise some people because when you think of the best Notre Dame defensive lineman, Sheldon Day isn't like the first name that comes to mind. He wasn't a first or a second round draft pick or anything like that, but he was a first or second team All-American in 2015. You know, it just kind of depends on which listing you looked at there, but he was very, very productive for the Irish that year. He also carved out a really nice career for himself in the NFL, despite being a little bit undersized. He's only 6'2". But then behind them, my honorable mention, Jerry Tillery. He was a first-round draft pick, a big, big recruit for Notre Dame at the time, and was really good for Notre Dame, especially in that 2018 season when Notre Dame made the college football playoff. Tillery was actually playing with a torn labrum throughout most of the second half of that season and was still incredibly productive. Like I said, first-round pick with the Chargers. His NFL career has not really gone to plan, but still a very, very productive player for the Irish, and he's going to make my ultimate team here. All right, now let's look at the linebackers, and we'll start on the outside. First one is easy. Right? It's Jalen Smith. He's one of the best Notre Dame defensive players of my life, and honestly in school history. The biggest shame about Jalen Smith's career is despite how productive he was, all the insane plays that he made, and all the stats that he put up, he probably would have been way more effective if he didn't have Brian Van Gorder as his defensive coordinator. Like, they just didn't blitz him for whatever reason, but he still was able to win the Butkus Award in 2015 for the nation's top linebacker. I think that if he didn't get hurt in his last game at Notre Dame against Ohio State in that Fiesta Bowl, if he didn't suffer that really catastrophic knee injury, I think Jalen Smith would have gone top 3 in that NFL draft that year. Unfortunately, because of that knee injury, he fell to the second round. Cowboys drafted him, and he still ended up having a really good NFL career, but I just don't think he was ever the same player after that knee injury. And honestly, it changed the course of college football because I think after that, that's a big reason why you see so many of these guys opt out of the bowl games is because of what happened to Jalen Smith, even though he has said he would not go back and change it, even though I don't really believe him. But either way, Jalen Smith, no doubt, starting linebacker on the outside on my ultimate Notre Dame team. As for the other outside linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, another Butkus Award winner for the Irish. He won it in 2020. He's truly one of a kind, and he's like the perfect linebacker in today's day and age. He could do everything for the Irish. He could cover. He could blitz. He could stop the run. And when he did make a tackle, boy, did you feel it on the TV. Like, if I were a running back getting hit by JOK, I probably would have just called it quits. He had that one huge hit against Florida State, and I remember just being like, oh my God, what a play by him. He was unbelievable. Should have been a first-round draft pick in the NFL. Then there was that weird heart thing that apparently came out, and then he fell to the second round, but it ended up working out for me because the Cleveland Browns took him. I couldn't believe that he was available, and then no surprise there. He's been one of the best players in the NFL on defense. Could have won Rookie of the Year before he got hurt. He's an unbelievable player, was a great player at Notre Dame, and is no doubt a starter on this list. For my backups, I've got Drew Tranquill and Tavon Coney. Two very good players. Tranquill, Super Bowl champion. I honestly can't believe he's had this good of an NFL career, but credit to him, his work ethic, his ability. He's a backup on this team. All right, at middle linebacker, I'm going to have one starter, and I think you know who I'm going to pick. It's Manti Te'o. This was obvious. Unanimous All-American, second in the Heisman Trophy voting, despite the fact that he played linebacker. He had one of the most unbelievable and basically improbable seasons for any Notre Dame player ever in 2012. And even though in the immediate aftermath, because of the whole fake girlfriend catfishing scandal, I feel like it made people not really appreciate just how good of a player he was in college. But then now that time has passed and that documentary came out on Netflix and people realized, wow, he really did get screwed. He's an innocent guy. He was just a little bit naive. And I think this story completely changed him anti-tail. Good, because he is a great person and he was a really, really great linebacker for Notre Dame. And I think now everyone is able to appreciate what he did at Notre Dame a little bit more than the public was able to do right after he graduated. And he really changed the course of Notre Dame football. Like, his impact on the field was great, but his impact off the field and how he sort of changed just everything about the Notre Dame football culture while he was there. I think he's made one of the biggest impacts of any Notre Dame player that has really come through that program in my lifetime. So he was an obvious choice to start at middle linebacker. For my backup, Courtney Watson. He played for Notre Dame late 90s, early 2000s, was a really, really good player on that team in 2002, probably the best player on a really good Notre Dame defense that year. And maybe you could make the argument that Shane Walton was a little bit better, but either way, Courtney Watson was a really good linebacker. And I wanted to make sure he got some recognition because I feel like he kind of gets forgotten because Notre Dame has had a lot of other good linebackers come through the program lately. Okay, cornerback. My starters, Julian Love and Benjamin Morrison. Benjamin Morrison, the only active player on the Notre Dame roster to make my team on offense or defense, but I think he's that good. He's the best player on Notre Dame's team in 2024. I think he's a surefire first-round draft pick in next year's NFL draft, so he was an easy pick. So was Julian Love. Julian Love probably should have won the Thorpe Award in 2018. Came into Notre Dame without a ton of hype as a recruit from Nazareth High School or maybe it's Nazareth Academy. I know my Chicago buddies are going to give me crap for not knowing that, but either way, he was not far from Notre Dame. Came over, was a really, really good player, just a shutdown corner in a way that Notre Dame hadn't really had in a long time. Extremely physical, really made life hell for the opposing wide receivers, and they'd get really frustrated by the stuff that he'd get away with. But he was just a great playmaker. And, one of the bigger what ifs, I should say, of Notre Dame football in recent years is what if he never got hurt in that game against Clemson in the college football playoff semifinal? Does Notre Dame win that game? No, they don't. But I think it would have been a lot closer because as soon as he got out of the game, once he got hurt, Clemson was like, oh, Dante Vaughn is covering Justin Ross. Let's go deep. Touchdown. Okay. He's still out there. Let's go deep again. Touchdown. And then the game was never the same after that. So Julian Love, really good player. It's unfortunate that he missed his last game. But, hey, at least he made my ultimate team. My backups, Shane Walton, I just mentioned him. Really, really good player. Converted soccer player on that 2002 team. He's got to make this list. Kavari Russell, another great Notre Dame player. Huge part of that 2012 team. One of the most surprising parts of that team because he came into Notre Dame as a running back, made the change to cornerback in fall camp because they basically had to do it. Starts from the first game on as a true freshman and ended up being a really good player for the Irish. I'll never really understand how he didn't have a really solid NFL career, but I guess we'll never know. Okay, at safety. This was actually pretty easy as well. Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton. These two guys have been two of the best safeties in the NFL in the past couple of years. I mean, Kyle Hamilton has only been in the NFL for 2 years, but last year, one of the best players in the entire league. Harrison Smith has been around for a really long time and has been a really, really good player for the Minnesota Vikings. He is probably a future Hall of Famer as well. When he was at Notre Dame, he's the only player in school history to register more than 200 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, and 15 pass breakups in a career. Also, if I really wanted to, I could have maybe cooked the books a little bit, put him at outside linebacker because he did play in the box a little bit, but no. I'm going to put him at safety. I feel like he's got to go in there. First-round draft pick as well. Kyle Hamilton, I mean, truly one of the most talented Notre Dame football players in a really long time. Unfortunately, his career was cut short in his third season. He suffered that knee injury against USC, so we really only saw 2.5 years of Kyle Hamilton. We only would have gotten 3 anyway because he was off to the NFL after that 2021 season, no matter what. But truly just unlike any Notre Dame player to come through. 6'4", long, fast. His very first play ever in Notre Dame Stadium was a pick six, and that was after he had a ton of hype around him coming in as a recruit and throughout fall camp. It was just like immediately living up to the hype, and he was just truly an unbelievable player, All-American, all of that. For my backups, I put Tom Zbikowski in there because just a childhood favorite, great safety, just such a fun player to root for. And then Xavier Watts, who won the award for the nation's top defensive player last year, doesn't even make my starting lineup, isn't even the first guy on the bench. So he's the only other active player who made the roster, but he's not a starter, unlike Benjamin Morrison. So I wanted to include him on here. I feel like he deserves it. Maybe if he somehow follows up this season with a better season than he had last year, he could potentially knock off Harrison Smith or Kyle Hamilton, which seems crazy, but hey, he's got a chance to do it this season. Also, honorable mention, Alohi Gilman. Not quite as talented as the other guys, but just such an impactful player for Notre Dame when he was there, and just always seemed to make the biggest play at the most important parts of the game. So I wanted to give him a shout out as well. He's not even really a backup. He's a third string, but still, he gets an honorable mention. So that's my defense. I've got Justin Tuck and Stephon Tuitt at defensive end, Lewis Nix and Sheldon Day at defensive tackle, at outside linebacker, Jalen Smith, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Manti Te'o at middle linebacker. I got Julian Love, Benjamin Morrison shutting down the opposing wide receivers at corner, and then Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton flying around at the back end of my defense. It's a really good defense. A really, really good defense. Is it as good as the Notre Dame offense? I don't know. Probably not. I feel like that offense is so loaded on the line and at wide receiver, but it'd be a lot of fun to watch these two go at it. All right, coming up next, I'm going to round out my all Notre Dame team from the past 25 years with a look at the top special teams players to come through the program, because they matter too. All right, we're going to round out my all Notre Dame team from the past 25 years with a specialist. And at kicker, Justin Yoon, Notre Dame's all-time leading scorer. He converted on 59 of 73 field goal attempts in his career, which is 80.8%. He was just a very, very consistent kicker for the Irish. You were never worried about him when he came out. He didn't give you a heart attack like some of the other Notre Dame kickers. You're like, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's kind of like the Spencer Schrader experiment where he could boot the ball, but he also just couldn't knock down the gimme shot, right? The 35-yarder. You never really knew what to expect when he came out there. That was not the case with Justin Yoon. I'm pretty surprised he didn't have an NFL career. I guess maybe that just had to do with the fact that he didn't have the strongest leg of all time, but still, he was deadly accurate when he was out there. So he was an easy pick for me at kicker. For punter, I'm going to go with John Sott, which he only had 1 year for Notre Dame in 2022, but it was just so fun watching him in 2022. He transfers over from Harvard. I don't think anyone had particularly high expectations for John Sott in his only year with the Irish, but it basically became a bit, and it was so fun. He only averaged 43.9 yards on average, which was like, I think, top 20 in the country, but not like a huge leg or anything like that. He was just deadly accurate, would pin the ball in the corner, put teams inside the opposing 20. And yeah, this is probably a little bit recency bias. Tyler Newsome probably has a case to be made here. He was there for a longer period of time, but I'm just going to go with John Sott because I just had so much fun rooting for him in 2022. And he also had to get a lot of work, unfortunately, because it wasn't like that Notre Dame offense was moving the ball super well that season. All right, for the returners, punt returner, easy. Tom Zbikowski, 3 career punt return touchdowns. The NCAA record is 8, so he's a little bit away from that, but he's tied for the most in school history with some all-time players like Tim Brown, Allen Rossum, and Ricky Waters. So he's in great company with those guys. He also had maybe one of the most iconic plays of my lifetime with his punt return touchdown against USC. It's kind of crazy because I feel like when you think back and you watch highlights of old games, like if your team ended up losing the game, you don't really appreciate the highlight that much. Like I'll give you an example. I love the Cleveland Guardians when they were the Indians and they were in the World Series in 2016. And Rajay Davis hit the home run in the 8th inning to tie it at 8 off Aroldis Chapman. It was one part unbelievable that he hit that home run. I think he only had 2 home runs all season long. And then you think of the context, Game 7, World Series, all of that, offer all this Chapman. It's like if the Indians had won that game, it would go down as arguably one of the best plays in baseball history, but then they lose to the Cubs in extra innings. And to me, it's like too painful to watch that because I just think about what could have been. For whatever reason, I don't really feel that way about the Tom Zbikowski punt return for a touchdown, even though Notre Dame ended losing that game in just brutal fashion. I don't know why. It has sort of transcended emotion in that respect because it was just so awesome in that moment. I think people who were at that game, unfortunately, I was not able to attend, but people who were there always talk about that being the loudest they've ever heard Notre Dame Stadium, and it was just unlike anything else. So maybe that's why that play is remembered so fondly, despite the fact that Notre Dame wasn't able to pull out the win. But he was an easy pick for punt returner on this team. I also was at the Notre Dame-Tennessee game in 2005. He had a punt return touchdown in that game. Also had an interception return for that game. Interception return for a touchdown in that game, I should say. So he was an easy pick. Kick returner was not an easy pick. Notre Dame hasn't really had that many dynamic kick returners lately. So I'm just going to cheat here. I'm going to put Golden Tate. He wasn't really the kick returner when he was at Notre Dame, but I think that's partially because he had to do literally everything on offense for most of the time that he was there. So they probably were like, let's give him a breather on kickoff returns. But when he did go out there on punt returns, he was very effective. He had that historic play where he basically just subbed himself in for John Goodman and then returned it for a touchdown. I believe Robbie Toma has been telling that story. I believe it, and I think that if they had put Golden Tate back there on kickoff return, he would have brought a couple back to the house as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to put him in there as my kick returner. So I've got Justin Unit kicker, John Sopp at punter, Golden Tate at kick returner, and Tom Zbikowski at punt returner. And that rounds out my all Notre Dame team from the past 25 years. I'm sure that a lot of you have opinions about my team, and some of you might think I got it all wrong. Maybe some of you agree with me. I'm interested to hear what you think, so let me know. Hit me up on social media. Let me know in the YouTube comments. I'm sure that I probably left out a player that I'm going to look back and be like, how could I possibly have missed that? But I really did spend a lot of time on this, and it was a really fun exercise for me to do, and now I feel like the only thing left to do is go back to playing EA Sports College Football 25 so I could hopefully play the Ultimate Team game mode and then build this team in the video game and play as them in real life. Because if you we'll look back at it one more time before we go here. So I got Brady Quinn at quarterback, Julius Jones at running back, Michael Floyd, Jeff Samardzija, Golden Tate at wide receiver, Michael Mayer and Tyler Eifert at tight end. My offensive line is Ronnie Stanley, Quentin Nelson, Jeff Fan, Zach Martin, Joe Walt. And then on defense, I've got Justin Tuck, Lewis Nix, Sheldon Day, and Stephon Tuitt on the defensive line. I got Jalen Smith, Manti Te'o, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker. Julian Love and Benjamin Morrison at corner, Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton at safety, Justin Unit kicker, John Sopp at punter, Golden Tate kick returner, and Tom Zbikowski is my punt returner. That'd be a whole lot of fun to watch this team go at it, and even though we're never going to be able to experience that, some of you might be able to kind of get something close to that on the video game. So that is going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish first listen of the day. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning with another new episode, and I'm also going to be taking questions this week for another mailbag episode, which will come out on Friday. If you've got some thoughts or questions, send them my way. As always, you can drop your questions in the YouTube comments or send them in on social media. X account is at Locked On Irish. The Instagram is at Locked On Irish Pod. Also, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. I'll see you guys tomorrow.